You know, Real Rashid, I'm pretty good at my job. A bright young reporter with a point of view. Interviewed a fallen Catholic archbishop, 4 Enron vice presidents. And if they've got something to hide, they always start with some kind of disguise. Not literally, not some dumb Halloween costume, gloves, contact lenses. They tell jokes. They're charming. And then at some crisis point, when I get close, it drops away. And I see a flash of the truth.
Armand didn't want me to do the interview, Daniel.
Still don't.
But he wanted to be close to it, right, Real Rashid? I mean, hey, whatever it is they're trying to hide, I'm probably not gonna crack it, which is, you know, who cares? Happens all the time. But I want to ask you, as a member of the inferior species, why say, hey, vampires are real? Here's almost all the story.
Thank you, Rashid.
Hey, listeners, welcome to the show. I'm Danny.
And I'm Mark.
And I'm Lara.
This is a spoilful podcast about Interview with the Vampires, Season 2, Episode 1. What can the damned really say to the damned?
And did you guys notice that it actually lists as Episode 8 on the title screen?
I did.
Really? I didn't check that out.
Because this is actually supposed to be part 2 of the same book as last season. So Episode 1, Episode 8, but either way. Here's a synopsis of what happened. Louis and Claudia travel to Europe at the end of World War II, searching for fellow vampires. Louis is tormented by the ghostly image of Lestat as the duo come across war refugees in Eastern Europe, and possibly something worse.
Interesting. Mark, what are your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts, I really enjoyed it because it literally takes place right after what happened last season. So we know that they kind of got rid of Lestat in a certain way, and they went on their venture. And very similar to the movie that we covered on Adrenaline Cinema Podcast for the actual movie, we did see that in the movie that Claudia and Louis actually went to Europe to search for other vampires. So we didn't get to see it to a certain extent. We only get to a certain point because now we're in World War II during this time. So what is it, Lara? Nazi Germany or Nazi Russia? I'm kind of like confused.
It's after World War II, after the Soviets had defeated the Nazis on the Eastern European front.
Okay.
And that's why they say they go in Eastern Europe, they go straight from being inhabited by the Nazis to being inhabited by the Russians.
Yeah. And there was a whole issue within that too, with like pretty much language at that point, because even Claudia, and we noticed that Claudia is more adept with language, whereas Louis is always sitting back. Mm-hmm. And she's taking charge of like translating, and she's more adaptive, not just in prey and killing, but also in talking and learning and speaking to people to luring them in. Mm-hmm. And that's very interesting. But in this case, I guess there's a mix of German and Russian going on. And it's like, oh, speak this language. No, you need to speak this language. And where they wind up eventually settling into is in Russia, I believe.
They're in Ukraine. Or no, they're in Romania. Sorry.
Romania.
I think they were in Ukrainian.
Which is
Romania.
Yeah, it's a mix at that point. Ukraine, Russian, and it's kind of a mixed language at that point. But a majority of what was involved during the takeover was German at certain points. So it's like, what language do I speak? And then, of course, we eventually meet somebody that does speak English. You're American? I'm English. Oh my God, it's the first time I've heard English in years. I thought that was amazing. I thought that was cool because it's something that we could all equate to. It's like, oh my God, you do speak this. Not listening to broken things that you know, because it's either A, you learned it brokenly, or you could speak it brokenly. And then, but they wind up living and getting to this civilization, like a commune almost, And then it's kind of strange. A stranger in a strange land at this point, and they're learning their ways. And I really did enjoy that aspect of it. And also I did love the characters that they did get involved with, like the American, his love interest, who is either Russian or German. I can't figure out which.
She's Romanian.
She's Romanian. Okay. I don't get languages that much, and I'm not very good with European stuff. So bear with us, everybody. But she was very beautiful. And very knowledgeable and very intelligent. And she puts that guy in his place. Trust me, that English guy had to be put in his place. But the thing is that it's its own little society in its little area, I guess, in Romania. And they do encounter something, both Louis and Claudia, but Claudia encounters it first. And she says it's a vampire. He's not sure about it. And it's like European voodoo going on with vampires at this point. In my opinion, that's my thought about it. And it's like, okay, this is strange. And then on top of that, it's the whole, I guess, the strangeness of vampires in Europe itself. So we're slowly moving into the movie version, but in a sense of pages. We're moving the pages of Anne Rice into the story of what would be, where we do get to meet, and we get that trickled in with Armand Rashid, or is Rashid Armand, and Armand is Rashid. It's like even Malloy is getting annoyed.
We have real Rashid now.
Yeah, we got real Rashid, and and you can see Malloy getting annoyed about the situation and wanting to get to the truth because he's a reporter. And you get Armand's jealousy of everything, and on top of that, him being very, how would you say it? Would you say he was being very much protective of Louis, or would you say he was like, I don't know, would he be?
I think he's really trying to monitor this whole situation. He said, because Louis told Daniel that Armand didn't want him to do this interview, but Louis wanted to. So Armand is kind of hovering over him like a mother hen, listening carefully to everything he's telling Daniel. Yeah.
And it's like, who's more in control here, Louis or Armand? And it's like, that's where I'm sitting at within this episode as I'm watching the whole conversations in between. And Malloy getting really pissed off. And then we get the story, and then even Louis gets the story kind of wrong. But we also get pages from Claudia that actually do depict it, and then Louis kind of changing that out. And we'll discuss that a little bit later. But I really enjoyed it overall in the sense that it gave us a whole perspective of where the story is going, and who's in control or who's not in control. And who wants to know, which is Malloy at this point, because he's sitting there and he's getting fed very well and being taken care of too, everybody. If you realize it's like he's still sick from the first season. If you remember, he was very sick.
Yeah, that's true.
So just to set the scene, I've read the first 2 books in the series, so I'll be able to identify some of the things that are in the books that have been brought to the show, but I am in no way an expert on these books. So I'm looking at it from knowing a bit about the books, a bit about the film, and then giving my opinion on this. But the first thing I really loved, and we should probably mention that the role that Bailey Bass played last year of Claudia is now being played by Delaney Hayes. Is that her name? Delaney Hayes?
Yeah, it is.
And I really loved at the very beginning, it said the role of Claudia will now be played by Delaney Hayes.
Yeah.
So if you've ever gone to a play, when an actor takes over a certain role, they always put that in the playbill that the role of so-and-so is now being played by this. And I just thought that was perfect since we're going to be going to the Théâtre des Vampires this season. It has the whole show had a very theatrical feel to it, which I loved.
Yes.
Yes.
When I first, on first watch, I was a little bit concerned because it felt a bit slow to me. and I was intrigued by it, but it was kind of missing the Lestat energy since we didn't really get any Lestat in this. We got Dreamstot, as they say. That's what Jacob Anderson is calling him now, is Dreamstot, and that's just a projection of
Yes.
Louis's imagination of Lestat. So it's not real Lestat, and I was missing that big Lestat energy. But
Un
then,
poquito of
yes,
Lestat.
we got to a little drink of Lestat.
Yeah, exactly.
But then on second watch, I was watching it, and
Exactly.
Jacob Anderson just really carried the episode, along with Delaney Hayes. Bringing her in, she did a really good job. I still am a fan of Bailey Bass, but I'm giving her some grace, and I really want to see her shine. But I really thought that Jacob Anderson carried this episode so well. He's like so angsty and so poetic. He's our perfect little emo vamp. I love him. So I really loved it.
Yeah, he is.
And I loved how poetic the
yes,
story comes across as you start to watch it, because it like the dialogue seems like poetry. And I know a lot of this comes right out of Anne's books, but also with the orchestral music in the background and everything. That's why I was thinking, God, this feels like watching a play, especially in the scenes with Daniel, Louis, and Armand sitting there. It almost seems like actors sitting on a stage.
I think that's probably why they took so long to get this out for the whole season. It's very much a theatrical production. And like you said, Lara, I did like the previous Claudia, and she did such a great job, but there was time that has transpired since then, so she probably has grown significantly. So we don't want a Carl situation like we did on The Walking Dead. So they got somebody who is within the same age point to work within that. And just like you said, with the whole stage play and everything else, that works out perfectly. I think the way they staged it, it worked out perfect within the show.
What do you think, Danny?
So the initial watch, I was like, oh, I'm not going to like this season. And then I was like, I don't know, it's like starting off really slow. And maybe I wasn't like giving it my 100% attention, because during my rewatch, I was like writing these notes, and I was like, wow, Louis is such a good actor. And like, well, Jacob Anderson is such a good actor, and he's doing such an amazing job with Louis. And, Delaney coming into this character, like all these like stunt works that she's doing, they're like so incredible. And like, Daniel, like being so aggressive with Armand, like disregard him, like disregard this, it's off the record. And I was just like, oh, okay, I am like, okay, now I'm in the zone. This is so I think being able to do that rewatch and just being able to dissect it, like every aspect of it, and writing my notes, I was like, okay, it's gonna, I'm liking these actors and their performances, and like you guys said, it's very poetic, just the way that everything played out, just Louis, at the end talking to Claudia, like, you can't run away. Like, we're doing this together. Like, you can't choose to run away. You can be mad at me for your reason, but like, we're in this together, which is funny, because we know what happens once Louis meets Armand, and there's like a rift that starts to kind of happen between Claudia. I guess I shouldn't be jumping ahead.
Honestly,
anyways,
Danny,
you're
thinking more or less of the film that you watched, which is fine, because I would do the same thing. Lara has a little bit more of the book knowledge because she's been reading. She had read the books. I'm going on the idea if I'm watching this as a new show, as stories unfolding.
Yeah.
And in comparison to what I know of the book and what I know of the movie, this version of Louis is very different from both of those. It's a kind of a mix. He's not as whiny as we talked about in the movie. he is a little bit more resilient in a sense of trying to work with what he has. Within this episode, it would be more Claudia and trying to rationalize certain things, and also dealing with the torment and abuse that he got from Lestat. Where in the book he was a little bit tormented,
Yeah.
he could seem a bit whiny, but in this case,
And I think they've changed enough from the books that we have no idea what's going to happen this season.
yeah, exactly. I think this is an amalgam to the point where they've created their own. And Anne Rice, I don't think is, she's passed, hasn't she, Lara? Yeah. So she's not involved. So these are creators that loved the books, loved the movies, but are creating their own world.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Christopher Rice is actually one of the people involved, and that's her son. And I think he was involved at the beginning with Anne Rice, if I'm not mistaken.
They're executive producers.
So I'm sure,
or they were. They were both executive producers, and he is still an executive producer on the show, or at least he gets the name recognition of that. I don't think he is involving himself too much in the show. I don't know if it's because they were unhappy with the way things were going, but he doesn't say anything negative. He doesn't say anything positive. He stays neutral on it.
I think he wants the characters to be as pure as they could possibly be in comparison to both book and film, now to the show. To the point of where his mother would probably been like, yeah, I'm fine with and content with that. Because we've already discussed this. All right, listeners, if you have not listened to our discussion about Interview with the Vampire from 1994, go back, listen to it, come back here. And then listen to our overall coverage of season 1. And then come back to this particular podcast about
episode
this episode. Oh, that's not me being boisterous and plugging and doing anything, but it does make sense in a sense that you could get your overall conclusion and thought. Because if you have not read the books, I have not read the books. Lara has read some of the books, or a majority of the books, actually.
No, 2. I read the first 2.
More than I have ever.
Which covers what they're doing right now.
And Danny hasn't read the books, but he was not too happy with Interview, the movie originally, but he watched it again.
I did read the book.
Oh, you did?
But I did. I got, but this was a long time ago. I read all the way up until Mimnock the Devil.
Oh, wow.
And then but I play with the reading part because it was more like I listened to the audiobooks. I know that a lot of people, when I say, "Oh, I read the Anne Rice books," by listening to them, they're like, "That's not reading," and it's like, I know, I listen to the audiobook.
No, it's reading. I say it's reading. I have to do audiobooks now because I have no time to actually sit and read a book, but audiobooks are good. As long as you're paying attention, it counts.
Okay.
You guys will hate me then.
Same.
You'll hate me because every year I reread Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
No,
so
reading's good. No, why?
No, reading's good.
Reading's good if you
I just wish I had more time.
Have like a good hour to sit without being bothered by anyone.
Well, that's also
which
like
I do not.
Too,
exactly.
Everybody. You could still read comics. So comics are still books, everybody.
Yes.
All right. Not to put a plug for Panels to Pixels podcast, but yes, comics are books. So, and there is definitely Interview with the Vampire. Guess what?
Graphic novel. I have it.
There you go.
I actually have the graphic novel of Claudia's story.
Oh,
really?
Wow.
I should probably read it. But yeah, it's actually right there. Interview with the Vampire, Claudia's story, and it's a graphic novel. And
okay, we want a review next week, Danny. A review of the graphic novel.
Don't look at the pictures. You got to read.
Okay, Pineapple Express.
Make up my story.
All right. We kind of digressed as we always do with any of these podcasts that I'm involved in. So, Danny, what were your favorite moments within? So, not to take over, but your favorite moment within the episode that really captivated you regarding relationships or character development or anything like that.
I definitely have to start with Jacob Anderson's portrayal of Louis,
Okay.
just because his emotion when it comes to Claudia, like it came through. Like his like he's starting to remember things that he like that weren't real because Daniel Malloy has been reading the diaries and he's been like saying like, well, this is what Claudia said, and then he's like, wait, maybe I'm remembering this wrong, you know. She came, I forgot the character's name, but she comes to the table and says something about dogs.
Amelia.
But then when Claudia leaves,
I think it's Amelia.
Yeah, Amelia.
Yes.
Yeah, when Claudia leaves, all of a sudden, like she starts talking about the war and the graphic stuff about what's going on, and so he's like having these mental like, am I remembering the right things? And then just in, comparing it to the movies and whatnot, we don't see Louis show emotion until towards the end. And here you're seeing him break down and like realize like Claudia, like Claudia was his life, and and just remembering all that stuff. So just that right there was like, I was like, okay, this season's gonna be good because we're gonna get these emotions that this emo Louis.
I hate using that term. I hate using it. He's a man about his emotions. All right. Maybe I'm emo. Okay, everybody. But the thing is that he's in touch and in tune with his emotions. Now, mind you, he might be too emotional because of his regret about Lestat and what they did to him. It's all within his subconscious, and what we get, like what you said, Lara, before about what was it, a dream stat? You have in your notes,
dream stat,
and I think it's dream stat, and it's like him constantly cutting his neck and bleeding out over, and then like what flew out of his neck? Was it a bat?
It was a bat. Something?
Yeah,
it was a bat.
A couple of times, I'm like, cool. What the fuck is that?
It was kind of gnarly. I'm like, what's going on here? It's like it's everything in Louis' mind of his regret of what he had done to Lestat, because he still, in the back of Louis' mind, I always still think that he owes Lestat something for giving him this life, for taking his life, his human life.
Yeah. Well, as he even says, he came by invitation. Like Lestat invited him into this life, and he took him out of this life that he was just hating, that he didn't even want to be a part of anymore, and gave him a whole new one. So he feels a ton of regret and responsibility for what he did.
Hence why they use sympathy for the devil at the very end of the movie. But the thing is that with this, he has a relationship with Claudia, which is more family oriented. He thinks of her as his little sister, and she is growing far substantially more than Louis is, and is more worldly as far as culture, language, knowing how to manipulate, whereas Louis plays still the dullard. He reminds me of in 22 Jump Street when you look at Tatum Channing. Not just
that's
to
a
give
deep
you
cut, Mark.
It is a deep cut. It's like, my name is Jeff, and she goes, say it in American, because the vampire here does. It's like, just say it and I'll translate.
Yeah,
because you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And Claudia does that to him, right? And she goes and she starts explaining it to her, because they do meet a feral style vampire at one point.
Yeah.
And they get into the deep notions of being a vampire at that point, which they never learned in America. And now they're in Europe and they're encountering all these people. And Claudia is the one that's is the learning vessel at this point.
I would say
And it's
that
so sad.
that devotion that Louis feels like he owes to Lestat is the same devotion Claudia feels like she owes to Louis. Like she could maybe go off on her own, but she feels this devotion to Louis the way that Louis has that devotion to Lestat.
But yet she still has that same defiance that Louis had to Lestat.
I don't know if Lestat or Louis ever was defiant to Lestat. I don't think he would have ever stood up to him if it weren't for Claudia.
So Claudia was the evil influence on Louis to Lestat.
Well, I mean, Louis has always been torn between the two, between his
that is true.
His lover and his child, essentially.
I would not say lover. I would say love, but not lover. I hate saying that, and there is that ambiguous tone of between Louis and Lestat. There is that lovers' quarrel that I think is.
Although I don't think it's ambiguous that they're lovers in the show. It may be in the books. It was hinted at, but in the show, it's very definite that they're lovers.
I believe that too, and we're pointing out more Lestat and Louis.
Yeah.
But with Claudia and Louis, I think it's a deep devotion.
Mm-hmm.
More than anything. Brother, sisterly, father, daughter, but in a sense where the child becomes the parent and the parent becomes the child.
Mm-hmm.
At
that's
points.
Definitely the case with Claudia and Louis. She's definitely become the more parental type in this episode.
Yeah, and she's guiding and she's leading more of the way in Europe than Louis would have. Mm-hmm. But when he has the upper hand because he's looked at as the elder at the table at that point, and he kind of feels like, oh yeah, you need to go along with the others. And I was like, oh wow, that's gonna bite you in the ass. Probably literally.
And that's always the tragedy of Claudia. I mean, she's a child, but she's probably smarter than several hundreds of vampires. But because she is in the guise of a child, she's never going to have that respect.
Then again, I always say this: women are far more intelligent than males. But that's just me. I'm not a genius by far in any way.
I judge people on an individual basis.
Well, I'm just saying I do find a lot of women that are far more intelligent or know how to read the room better than I do.
How about you, Laura? Any scenes pop out for you?
Well, I want to start with Delaney first. I thought she did a really good job in this. I have this personal hang up that maybe it's because I'm a visual person and I can detect faces really quickly. Whenever they substitute an actor, especially a big actor in a show with another actor, it always throws me off. I don't like it because I can never have that same relationship. That's why I can't watch The Witcher next season. As they replaced Henry Cavill. But I'm just like, I attach a face to a character, and then it's really hard for me. So I think I will eventually get there, but right now I'm still like mourning the loss of Bailey Bass because I think she had some contractual issues with staying on the show, but because of Avatar. But I thought Delaney did a really good job, and I'm looking forward to seeing what she brings to Claudia. And maybe if she's on the show long enough, I'll just forget Bailey and then she will be Claudia. And this whole part we're talking about where they're in Eastern Europe is actually a big chunk of the books that was never in the 94 film. So we're actually getting that part of the story now.
Yeah. I think we're leaning more towards Armand and how Louis and Claudia encounter Armand.
Yeah, I think we're going to get there.
Yeah.
But this whole part with Morgan and Amelia actually happens in the book. I think if you remember, Danny, in the book, they come across a newlywed couple and his name is actually Morgan and his wife was bitten by a creature. And that's the first human they interact with.
Yes, I do remember that. I will say, when it comes to the new Claudia, I am digging her a lot more than I did Bailey.
Yeah.
Bailey's a great actress. Don't get me wrong. But I don't know what it is about this actress that just like screams child, because there's a scene where she's told to go play with the other kids, and then she like goes up to one of the kids and just like pushes the kid. I am dying laughing, and I'm like, that is such a childish thing to do, to be like, I don't want to play with you.
Well,
out of my way.
That little kid came up to her and touched her face and said crow, which I'm sure is a derogatory term for black. And so she just like pushes him over. She's like, I don't need to deal with you.
Well, she knows all the
I didn't
language.
make that connection.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
I
make that connection. You're right.
Away that it was derogatory. And I was just like, the first thing I thought was like, oh, damn. It's going down.
Well-deserved push.
Yeah. Claudia ain't got time for that.
Exactly.
Well, they also stated in the very beginning when they do get approached that they don't get a lot of colored people in that area. And the fact that also they're also recognized by Amelia as being what? American. It's like, oh, American. It's like, oh, damn. We're all called out.
Yeah, I even think that's why Amelia says they're not so used to seeing good-looking men when she walks them both into the warehouse that all the townspeople are staying in. I believe it's because they're all staring at them because they don't see people of color often walk into their town, and to put them at ease, Amelia says, oh, they're not so used to seeing good-looking men.
Well, honestly, he is a good-looking man.
Everyone in this show is good-looking. Everyone's so beautiful.
Know, exactly,
it's sad. Right? It's delicious eye candy, but it's like, oh, how can they be so gorgeous?
I mean, that is the vampiric way of just being a gorgeous individual.
Yeah, exactly. They don't fight the ugly, is what you're saying, Danny. Okay, I got it. So I'm not going to get bit.
No,
we are talking to a beauty king here, though. So
that is true. Yeah.
We have royalty in our presence.
Yeah, we do. Do you want to acknowledge that, Mr. Danny Espinola? Do you?
I am the current reigning Mr. Gay Fresno of 2024.
Awesome.
I said we're in the presence of royalty.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. How about you, Mark?
Well, the things that captured my eye actually and ears as I was going through it, it's like I just love the wit battle between Malloy and Armand. It's just
I love it.
It's like it's two opposing dangers, especially when Malloy constantly talks about his of how Armand was like representing himself as Rashid. Real Rashid, would you say this? And I was like, he's just pointing it out of how he was swayed. It's like, would you wear like blue contacts, not show your presence? And it's like, and then it gets to that point where they dismiss Rashid. And Armand is getting to the point where it's like, I can't deal with this. And you know that Armand is trying to withhold information, and Malloy knows it. But Louis wants to get everything on the record, and Armand wants to say, no, we shouldn't show everything of what's going on in our world. Yeah. Because there's something
Armand is
there's something dark there that they don't want to Armand doesn't want to reveal. And it has to do with something with Malloy and the previous experience that Malloy had with Louis, I think. But that's just me.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there's something there. There has to be something there, especially it seems like Armand wants to lead the narrative of this story. And Malloy's like, no, you're not involved in this. This is between me and Louis.
Yep.
This has nothing to do with you. So every time that Armand would interject, Daniel Malloy would be like, disregard this vampire. He's not, off the record. He's not part of it, And even when Armand like decides to join in on the interview, and he starts to say stuff about it, Danny Miller's like, no, we'll get to that. We'll get to you. We're still talking to Louis. Like I'm still trying to get his vibes on, his perspective of what's happening before we get to where he meets you. Like, don't jump ahead. Like, don't try to lead this narrative. This is me and Louis' interview. Like, we'll get to you.
Yeah. And I love that Daniel, this cantankerous old reporter, is putting a 500-year-old vampire in his place.
Yeah, of all things. Now, mind you, Malloy is literally at times dying.
Yes.
And they're keeping him alive and giving him what would be a rich person's delight dinner and lunch and breakfast. I mean, I would love to sit there with them and have that. And,
right?
And bask in the daylight that they do at certain points, because we do realize that from the first season. Because we do see Louis is able to sit there in some sort of light they have. Remember?
Well, he could sit, where the tree there is. But Armand himself, he stands right next to the sunlight. The sunlight doesn't bother him at all.
Which is something, spoilers, for those of you. When I jump ahead, we already covered Interview with the Vampire. But you can watch Queen of the Damned on Tubi. It's available now. Go there and watch it. Cheap plug.
You end up finding out that the longer they exist, the less they need to feed.
Correct.
And they can withstand the sun. So that's an interesting trade-off.
Yeah.
Being an ancient one.
Yeah, and on top of that, we do learn within the episode too, because there's talk earlier on with Claudia and Louis and somebody else about crucifixes and Bible stuff and how they say it's a bunch of hooey.
Yep. The garlic doesn't bother them. The crucifixes don't bother them.
It's like something out of Lost Boys when it's like, no, I love garlic nuts, just not that much. As we talked, as Reba and I talked about on the Lost Boys when we covered that for Adrenaline Cinema. But it's so funny how they put these things into fruition of the story of Anne Rice's lore, and it became more common within like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, even True Blood, things of that nature, where they utilize those, where people like vampires could go out in the daylight with certain things. There's a certain way for them to get out there. And I think Penny had brought it up recently on what was it? Still Saying the Buffyverse podcast about how, what's a Slayer gonna do? They're gonna pull out a cross. Oh, you're not Catholic? Hold on, let me. Oh, we get the Jewish cross. The
Star of David.
Star of David. Let's go. Let me get this. Let me get that. What are they going to do? Pull out everything known to man? What if they say it's like, no, I'm an atheist? And they give you that rock eyebrow and go, oh, darn. So literally it's they kind of put it null and void at that point. So literally holy water is not going to do anything. A cross is not going to really do anything, or stake, I should say. Cross, stake, holy water, beheadment will do anybody in, honestly. And then, obviously, daylight.
Yeah.
We shall see. The one great thing about Anne Rice and her vampires are that they kind of reset the table as far as vampire lore went. Because before that, it was all based on Dracula and, of course, old European mythology. But I think Anne Rice's vampires kind of created a whole new archetype for genre? Vampires. Yeah. Just vampires that are more human, less beastly.
Yeah, that is true. But they still have the fangs.
Speaking of beastly.
Yep. Speaking of, we should talk about the most important part of this episode, which was
the beast that we see
in the extra and also in the books, and called these the Revenants. They're kind of like the returned. Yes.
Yes, and I have to say, watching that part, I was like, did I jump over to the movie Jeepers Creepers? Because that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, I'm like, what is this creature?
Yeah.
And it's like, Claudia meets this, revenant, creature. She doesn't know what it is. She's trying to convince Louis, like, I found one, and he's like, maybe it was a snake, and she's like, no, it's not a snake, and he's like, a baboon, and she's like, baboons don't have fangs, and I'm like, I was like, that whole like introducing that vampire, and even introducing. I don't know if it's a mother figure vampire protecting her child, so just that whole thing of the fight scene, the stunts, like I think that's why I'm really liking this new Claudia, because she's doing all these stunts, and I don't think they gave the previous actress those stunts, so I can't really compare them, but that's why I was just like, ooh, this is going to be a really good season, just because they're doing these stunts where she's being knocked across,
across the forest.
And and then she goes, oh, I fell off the tree, and then she has to go get her arm relocated.
Her arm's all twisted, and she's like, Daddy, I fell out of a tree. And then Louis knew something was up then. And I loved what Louis called the Revenant. He called it a catfish with teeth.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's not a vampire. That's a catfish with teeth.
And it's so
I'm
odd.
a vampire.
It's so odd that how they have to show kind of, I don't know, discrimination with their own because of how they look.
Well, they've never seen anything like that before. I mean, they've pretty much only seen one other vampire in their life, and he was quite dashing.
Well, towards the end, he wasn't so much when they threw him into the swamp.
But they haven't done that, have they? Not in this universe. They slit his throat, put him in a box, and sent him to the dumpster.
Yeah, that is true. And not in this particular universe. That was a different universe with Christian Slater, Brad Pitt, and Tom Cruise. But I do enjoy the fact that we do get a little bit of difference between vampires and them learning from it. And then they have to learn from that. We don't really get that much within shows or even movies. Or if it does happen in movies, it's like, oh, hold on. Yeah, this happened. And it's like, oh, we'll accept that because it's written in the movie. But with this, it's over time. So at least within the hour, we've had that experience and they were able to learn. So hopefully within this, I'm thinking we're moving more towards Claudia's need to have somebody to relate to as well. So I think we're going to move into that.
She's very surprised to find a woman vampire.
Correct. And her longing because she met that one woman. And now, mind you, she is not the pictorial version of what she would think of a vampire mother. But I think in time she will find that, like we saw in the film. Or in the book. Yeah.
And Claudia even says to Louis, she's looking for a vampire who's not an asshole. Because the only three vampires she's met in her life is Louis, Lestat, and the one who abused her. So, of the three vampires she's met, all three have been assholes, and she's trying to relate to this female vampire who they do have this very touching moment where she's talking to her. And I also thought that was really interesting too. And I think it's I don't know if it's actually in the books from the two that I've read so far. And I don't know if you'll remember, Danny, that the reason the revenants, look so gaunt and decomposed is because the blood is bad. So Louis is telling them there that the blood is bad where they are because everybody's so sad. And even Louis says it, all the blood they're drinking from these people who have been through hell and back during World War II, it's kind of deteriorating their blood. It's like they're eating fast food or something. That it's like
they're eating death.
They can't stay warm.
Yeah.
They can't, they have no energy and everything. It's because they need blood that's happy, joyful blood, like they were having in America.
They were literally sucking on death at that point because, like you said, it was sad, but also a lot of those people were dying at the same time. And what happens to vampires when they drink dead blood?
Yeah,
they kind of deteriorate and become dying themselves, and they have to live off the means of the living. We got that from the film because we saw at the very end, Lestat was like living. He ate an alligator, and then he had to eat all the vermin, all the stuff that Louis was doing to survive throughout those years. And at the very end, he winds up dining on that version of Malloy, and then becoming revitalized at that point. I think that's literally what it is that during that time of war, people were literally dying.
Just the area that they were in, it was so full of sadness because Louis says when, after Hitler kills himself, all of Europe is rejoicing except for where they were, which is in Romania, because as soon as the Nazis moved out, the Soviets moved right in and began their occupation. And so everyone there, they didn't get to enjoy the fruits of victory after World War II. They were immediately invaded, and just their entire lives have been this kind of sad story of occupation. So,
indentured.
There's no joy in their lives. And that's what the vampires are drinking, this sad, joyless blood.
The sadness, as it were. Then they go to France and they drink all the happiness.
So why do you guys think Diana killed herself at the end? Because she tells Claudia that she'll come with her. And then she turns to the fire and says, "We own nothing," and throws herself on it, which is very similar to the story that Lestat told us about his maker throwing himself on a pyre of fire and killing himself as soon as he turns Lestat.
Was that Marius or thinking somebody else?
It's not Marius. It's
okay.
I'm sorry, book readers. I can't come up with the name right now, but it's not Marius.
I know.
I'm just asking.
It does start with an M.
We'll have the answer for you next episode. Next episode, we'll have the answer to that.
Yes.
Okay, so this is
to the Googles.
So right. So this is a shout out to an ex that I just reconnected with, and we're becoming friends again. Billy, who I have been texting nonstop saying, "Hey, so what does this mean? Hey," because he was the one who introduced me to the Anne Rice series.
Okay.
And who, so I will text him and say, "Hey, what is this?" Or like I just watched this episode, and they did this, and are like, do vampires cry blood or do they cry tears? Because in the movie they, Louis cried tears, and in the show he's crying blood. So so he's like my Wikipedia for Interview with a Vampire. So,
and what did he tell you?
He tells me he'll like give me notes. So
they do they cry blood?
Do they cry blood?
Yeah, they cry blood. Yeah.
Okay, so it's very similar to what we get everybody like in True Blood, where they do cry blood.
Yes.
And Lestat's maker was Magnus. So we have the answers,
Magnus.
People.
Oh, she looked it up, everybody.
There we go.
Google is your friend.
Yes.
But yeah, overall, I really did enjoy the episode. I really had a good time of what happened. I look forward to what we get in the next episode, because we do get left off in a kind of cliffhanger-ish.
Oh yeah,
ending.
that last scene,
Yeah.
that monologue that Louis is giving to Claudia is like, it's you and me and you. And he's talking back to her and says, if you were the last vampire on Earth, it would be enough. And he looks at her, and then the camera pans back, and sitting right next to her is our lovely Lestat. So was he saying to
Yes.
Claudia, or was he saying that to Lestat? It makes you wonder.
Both.
That's why you're supposed to be wondering this whole time. It's like, where are Louis' loyalties?
Well, Louis is also losing his mind at the same time. And I think Malloy understands that based upon the fact that he was able to read those pages that Claudia had left that were ripped out.
I don't think he's read them yet. He's talking with Armand about showing them to him.
Okay.
Yeah, which I thought had been destroyed. So when that whole conversation with Armand happens, I was like, oh, he told them that part of the diary were like destroyed. Like nobody needs to know about that time period, you know?
Yeah.
And so now he's asking for it because I think he's wanting to know, like, am I telling this story to its authenticity? Like,
yeah.
And whatnot. So
because this
I
whole
thought they were destroyed.
Season, I think they've promoted the fact that this tagline, memory is a monster. And I don't think Louis can trust his memories.
No, because he's always going back and rethinking and reevaluating what had happened in his head.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, Armand is very much aware of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he's older.
Yeah, so yeah. I wonder what kind of
how much did he have to drink?
Hold. Yeah. How much hold does he actually have on this whole thing? Because we don't really get this in the films where Armand's anywhere, you know.
No.
And I have to again text Billy, hey, does Armand end up with Louis? And we had a conversation about how Louis goes to Armand because he's grieving Claudia, and Armand is just a toxic person who is with Louis just because I guess it's a new shiny toy, you know.
Oh, it sounds like
I
my
was thinking
ex-girlfriend that I just got back to with like a while ago. Okay.
What? Are we getting TMI here, Mark?
Yeah, I know. Sorry. I got back together with an ex, and Ben had said, "Be careful," and I was. And then she showed her true, colors again, and I was just like, you know what? Walk away.
Maybe we'll get some Armand foreshadowing here in real life.
Exactly.
But I love the actor playing Armand, whose name I don't have in front of me right now. He doesn't have the physical traits of the Armand in the book, who is actually supposed to be Ukrainian in origin. But I think he's definitely got the personality of Armand. And he's beautiful. Oh, God. Yeah. Every time I see him, I'm like, God, that man is just so lovely.
Oh, I'm curious. Is he Hindi? Is he Arabic? Or I'm like,
unsure. I would look it up, but he has the most beautiful hair and skin. I'm like, wow.
Oh, definitely the hair and skin and his eyes.
Yes, those lovely vampire eyes.
Not the vampire eyes. I'm pretty sure that it's like his real eyes at some points. But yeah, he's a really good actor and very handsome. But those were my thoughts overall. What did you guys have any notes or anything?
Yeah. How about you, Danny? You got notes?
The only notes that I seen the previews to what this season is going to bring. I am super excited to get to the Theater of the Vampires because if I am assuming correct, the vampire that they've introduced in the previews is it Sergio or Santiago?
Santiago.
Sergio, right?
Santiago.
Santiago.
and I am very intrigued to find out what is to come, because it's just, if you watch the previews, it is. I'm excited for this season.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you're excited for it. I'm excited to be in Paris because I am a shameless Francophile. So when they arrived in Paris at the end, I was like, we're in Paris now. But my notes is, oh man, I hope they fix this, but Delaney's contacts drive me crazy. Her vampire contacts, because it makes her eyes look pink, at least on the screens that I'm seeing it on. I really liked Bailey's contacts last year because her eyes almost look orange. They almost look like lion's eyes. But Delaney's to me looked really pink. So I hope they fix her contacts. Same thing on The Witcher. Like sometimes his eyes would be like glowing amber fire color, and then sometimes he'd look like a lizard because he had these weird green eyes.
Yeah, they would put that like center little sliver in it. And it's like, what's going on here?
I never paid attention to that, so now I want to pay attention to the contact.
Just like in Twilight New Moon, we don't get our main boy Lestat on the show, and so they got to bring him back in hallucinations.
Yes.
Yeah.
For the Twilight fans out there.
Sure.
They had to have hallucinations of Edward because he wasn't around, and he's the main guy. We got to have our main boy Lestat in here somewhere.
We don't talk about sparkly vampires.
I'm bringing it up every
show.
single time.
I know you would.
It's okay, I'm with you, Laura. I did like it twice.
I don't mind it. It's just like, oh my god, it's so inbred in this society.
So I like to drive Mark crazy with my Twilight references.
Yeah, Captain Sparkle Fingers.
Yeah, and last thing, I bet you watch her, Mark. Katie O'Shaughnessy on YouTube.
Oh, yeah,
She's a big time.
Yeah,
big time Walking Dead reviewer on YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah, I just came across her yesterday, and she's doing reviews of this show this season right now because she said she watched Interview with the Vampire season 1 recently. She binged the whole thing, and in her words, she said it is one of the best shows she has ever seen. So for people, she says it's the most underrated, underappreciated show. So if people out there want to, share this with their friends so that it stays on the air. She absolutely loved it. And she said, like, Jacob Anderson is one of the best actors of our time. She was just going berserk over it.
Yeah, she loves her she has her fandom.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, everybody, the way Katie started, I remembered her in the very beginning of The Walking Dead, and she was doing YouTubes. She was building up a whole, and then now The Walking Dead has kind of waned away. We had The Ones Who Live. We're gonna get another Daryl spinoff, Daryl and Carol. But she built her fandom on that, and she's got a ton of Walking Dead tattoos on her. She's gone everywhere in England, all over in Europe, where they have Walking Dead conventions. She is a huge fan, so she loves this. Go check her out. And that's Katie O'Shaughnessy.
She absolutely loved the show, and she absolutely loved this first episode.
Yeah.
Should we move on?
Any quotes?
Yeah.
I was going to say, let's go to the quotes.
Let's do it.
Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Me?
Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead. Yes, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, all right. The first one will be from Louis saying, can you imagine never dreaming? Would you look forward to sleep, or would it terrify you when the day broke? And Armand just responds, or is it the sleep of an infant?
Mm-hmm. Very poetic. Again, coming back to, this is a very poetic episode where just everything is just poetry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Laura?
Well, one of the ones that I liked from Lestat was, you ruin it with remorse. It was a perfect betrayal. You gave me a death of distinction. It's so Lestat to say that. And then I love Louis going in there with the vodka as a peace offering to the people who take them in, and says, never mess with a magical vodka Negro. and he goes to dance with Amelia, and he says, "You really want to marry him?" Referring to Morgan, and Amelia's response is, "He's got a big one down his pants." And I love that they can always bring the humor into this show, no matter how dark it gets.
That is true.
Yes, especially when going into my quote, when we are introduced into this, this new vampire, and Louis like, "I'm a vampire. That's not a vampire. That's a catfish with teeth. Dirty." And then the variant, I call it the variant. Like he growls and he goes, "Who doesn't like us?"
Yes. I love it. They always put in some good
one.
humor. The writing on the show is so excellent. The dialogue is really snappy and just so many lines that you would never expect. like Louis' line.
Yeah.
Yes.
I only have a few more if you want me to throw them out there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Claudia to Louis, and this is pretty funny. This is their anger, saying, "I've known exactly 4 vampires in my life, and you've all been the worst. Lestat, Antoinette, the mother effer, and you. I'm looking for one, just one, that ain't a goddamn bastard."
Exactly.
Yeah, that's Claudia at her peak, and her anger at that point because of what she's looking for. Next one would be from Lestat and his dream state, as it were, to Louis, saying, "Purgatory is a lovely room for betrayal, is it not?" And that was to Louis within his swamp dream of Lestat. And the last one I would say would be, "That's why I'm coming after you, real Rashid." And that's from Aloy. "At least with you, I can effing break." And that's regarding Armand with his getting more information regarding World War II and during that time with Louis and Claudia.
Yeah, I really appreciate the writing on this show. That'd be it for me.
Yeah, that's it for me as well.
I don't have any more. Any notes or anything, or any?
We did get some feedback on this show.
Yeah, we did. Do you want to read it, Lara?
Yeah, Sam Lowe sent us some feedback on Facebook, which you can all do. She says, "Yay, my favorite toxic family is back. Armand continues to make me suspicious. Why does Louis have memory problems, dude? Daniel is an international treasure and cracks me up. Really dig the idea that our life experiences change what our blood tastes like. It makes sense. We're just big plants absorbing our environment. So happy it's back and that you're covering it." Thanks, Sam.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Of course, if this set of podcasts is so new, so please to submit your feedback. Let's see here. Leave us some feedback and just say hi. You can send us an email or a voice message at talk@podcastica.com. If you head to podcastica.com, you can use the handy voice message link. Check us out on our media, facebook.com/podcastica, our Twitter @podcastica, and our Instagram @housepodcastica.
And while you're there, if you haven't already, check out the other podcasts on the Podcastica network, like Run for Your Lives, that has just covered Annihilation. You could check out Still Slaying, a Buffyverse podcast with Penny and what is it, Kara? And they're covering season 3 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think they're 3/4 in, so check that out. What is it? What is Randy and the rest of them doing?
They've got their improv podcast. Welcome to the Apocalypse.
There you go. I didn't want to get it wrong. So I really do enjoy that. It's great storytelling and very improvisational. You could actually get a lot of the people from the Patreon that are on there. I heard Jeff. I heard Jason. I heard Lucy. I've heard. Oh my goodness, Greg. There's so many people that are involved. So if you haven't started to Welcome to the Apocalypse, check that out. That's what Randy and everybody else involved. You could find that on podcastica.com. podcastica.com. So just go to podcastica.com. You can find all the links for everybody else that's on there. There's a ton of podcasts going on. Extraordinary, She-Hulk cast, the Marvel podcast, where they talk about Marvel stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So check it out.
What about you? You and Jamie. Come on, pimp your show out.
Oh yeah. Well, we're Jamie and I are doing Sandman Cast for Podcastica as well, and we're covering Dead Boy Detectives.
Yay!
So check that out as well. That all you have to do is click on which would be for Sandman Cast on the Podcastica network. So at podcastica.com, you'll find it. You can see my ugly mug, and you could click on and then just go from there and listen if you like. Honestly, we are not familiar with the books of Dead Boy Detectives, but we have fun talking about the show episodically. So if you're into that,
it's a really good show.
It is.
We're having a good time. We know it dropped all at once on Netflix. We know people love to binge it. Sorry, we're doing it episode by episode, week by week. If you want to get your full taste of everything, you could go to our friends with Derek and John at TV Podcast Industries, and they'll cover it 2 episodes at a time. But check us out because we have a lot of good times.
All right. So next week we are covering season 2, episode 2. Do you know what it means to be loved by death? Very poetic.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, that is our coverage for this episode.
And I just want to thank everybody just for listening. I'm Mark.
And I'm Danny.
And I'm Lara.
And this was the Vampcast.
Thanks for listening.